So there's going to be a toggle switch for you all that's on the microphone. You're going to push it up and the light will go on. So in what ways did the film affirm or challenge what you were taught about equal opportunity and the American dream? Just start with the cream puff. You want me to ask it again? In what ways did this film affirm or challenge what you were taught about equal opportunity and the American dream?
Well, I found it pretty interesting kind of watching the progression of, I mean, I was taught that you work hard and get a job. I did go to college, but I didn't finish college, so I was somewhat educated. I worked my way up in a corporation, and I had a pretty good job, and then in 2008, 2009, my world crashed. Like most people, I bought a very expensive house because I had a great job, and then my house just lost like 45% of its value. So this film sort of just brought that home, like that I was not, I mean, I knew that happened, and I didn't really know a lot of the statistics about how it happened to other people, so it was very eye-opening to me.
My thanks to all, I think, everybody for being here and for the invitation to be a part of this panel.
Sorry about that. So growing up with a family, a migrant farm worker family, I started working to help out my family at the age of 11 through the age of 17. And there's many days where I found that type of work extremely difficult. And in my eyes, as a child, I always felt that farm work was the hardest work in the world. And so the days that I would get really, really upset about working in the fields, my mom would tell me, you know, if you get your education, you won't have to do this type of work the rest of your life. So in my view, it was, you know, education was equal to success, and success meant I didn't have to work in the fields. And so for me, it was very important to get an education. And I also learned that, you know, I was very fortunate to be born in the United States, a country where everybody refers to as a land of opportunity. And the harder you work, the better your chances of realizing your dreams. And so, I mean, based on a lot of the families that were interviewed, I mean, families are working extremely hard and yet not able to make ends meet. Now, I'm fortunate to work for an organization that provides the majority of its services to the farm worker community. We also serve low-income families. But for me, it's an honor to be representing an organization that provides these services to the farm worker community, because I know what that type of work is like. It's backbreaking, families working in very harsh conditions and for very low wages and little to no benefits and labor protections. So I know that I'm proud to be representing an organization such as ours that can reach out to those families that live in rural areas that really need the assistance.
Well, I should say this. Besides my prior career as chief economist in Idaho, and I apologize for my voice, I'm coming off of the crud. I'm hopefully done with it, but apparently it lingers for a bit. But having been chief economist for the state for quite a long time, I retired in 2010. Since then, about 9 months later, I became director of the Idaho Center for Fiscal Policy, where my job has many similar requirements as when I was chief economist. But now my role is to provide fact-based information and analysis for purposes of informing public policy decisions on a much broader basis. Before, I used to work pretty much strictly on the revenue side of the equation and do fiscal analysis and economic forecasting. Now I look much more closely at the expenditure side as well. And given all that's happened, there wasn't a lot in the movie that was particularly surprising. I mean, I've been aware of this stuff for quite a long time. But just as a little bit of a personal aside, Robert Reich worked in the Clinton administration, and I think Clinton did a lot of good things. But one of the things that I found frustrating during the Clinton administration was his turning over economic policy to Robert Rubin and Lawrence Summers and Alan Greenspan, and they did some serious, serious damage. And I know he's done some mea culpa since then, but not nearly enough. I mean, those are the kind of things. And you know, at the time, I was an economist in Idaho doing regional stuff and public finance, and it upset me. Well, then when George Bush was elected, now we have a situation where I, for the first time ever, felt rage well up inside me over the fiscal damage that he did in his first year in office, in terms of upsetting the fiscal stability of the federal government through his tax policies and basically creating a mess that I felt at the time would probably take decades to straighten out. And that was kind of unique for me to feel that strongly about something like federal fiscal policy. Of course, 9/11 came along and everything changed, and I forgot about it for a few more years. Well, it's still serious stuff. What I really didn't appreciate as an economist was how serious the problems were that were developing at the national level. And one thing I guess I would say is economists get a lot of stature. Well, in my opinion, the economics profession has become beholden to the kind of moneyed interests that you saw in the movie. And I don't think today economics is really doing a good job in terms of providing objective analysis of macroeconomics and some of these other things. I mean, one of the things that really upset me about Alan Greenspan before he left the Federal Reserve was he goes to Congress and lectures Congress to cut Social Security. That's way above his pay grade. He's a central banker. I mean, if there's a problem with deficits, that's fine. But to say, and the solution is to cut Social Security, give me a break. What do you know about Social Security? Apparently not much. I mean, it's been an interesting path. And I'd also say that as I was seeing the onset of the Great Recession and watching how bad the damage was, I had a couple of, well, I have a chart I was going to show, but it doesn't matter because it's pretty much been shown. I was surprised a lot of the thoughts that I had about what to talk about, they're already done. The movie really covered it well. But as a Great Recession unfolded, I was seeing it from an abstract standpoint. My wife, who worked for a forest product company out of Federal Way, Washington, would come home crying because they had gone from 55,000 employees. When she was finally laid off, which was about the time I was retiring, they were down to about 14,000. And it was just, I mean, it was ground zero for the carnage that happened. And I could see the carnage in an abstract sense, and it hurt me deeply. I mean, we have things now like, for example, I mean, the unemployment rate is a bit of a joke in terms of the attention that it gets relative to its significance and importance. There was a discussion of the rise in labor force participation. We're back at late 70s levels. I mean, we have a massive problem in this country with long-term unemployed. And apparently the solution in our current policy environment is take away any semblance of benefits so they'll be desperate enough to, I don't know, go chop wood in the forest and keep their homes. I don't get it. Because the jobs aren't there. And I think it was pretty clear in the movie that if you don't have a vibrant middle class, you're not going to have a strong economy. An economist named Joseph Stiglitz was in the Clinton administration. He left. He was basically drummed out. He lost. And he wanted, for example, financial policies that had transparency, that were open, so that we wouldn't get into the kind of mess that we ended up in. And he was drowned out, along with Brooksley Born, who was the head of the Commodities Futures Trading Commission. There have been people who have tried to sound the alarm. And at the time, I wasn't paying attention to the Commodity Futures Trading